Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to a new video tutorial. Today I'm pairing up with Pretty Pink Posh as well as Wow Embossing Powder to bring you this video. So I grabbed the Stacked Edges 2 die from Pretty Pink Posh. It has this hexagon pattern on it, and I cut out 3 of those using my die cutting machine. On a scratch piece of paper, I am just using a VersaMark ink here to ink up the hexagons, and I'm going to ink up all 3 of them. On a separate scratch sheet of paper, I'm going to pour some Turkish Nights embossing powder over top. The reason why I changed the paper underneath is because the embossing powder would stick to the VersaMark that was all over my scrap piece of paper, and I don't like to waste it because I can funnel all of this embossing powder back into the container when it's done. So I'm going to do this 3 times for all 3 of the strips of hexagons, and I'm going to melt that with my heat tool here, and it is such a beautiful embossing powder. It's kind of like if you mix together gold and rose gold to get a pattern, and it's just got a really pretty sort of goldish pink tinge to it and really just gorgeous. But it is different than a rose gold. So now that all of those are melted, I'm ready to get started on putting together my card. I'm going to be using a panel of Neenah Solar White 80 pound that measures 4 by 5 1/4. And I'm grabbing some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive and adding some glue onto the back of my hexagons. And I'm going to glue my first one directly in the middle of my card. I know they're hanging off the edges, but I can trim those later also. Or you can leave them as is because we are going to add a card base that's slightly larger. It's just up to you as to how you like your style to be. So I'm going to glue these here on the right and left as well to create my background. And this is going to create my background to give me an excellent setup onto where to put my sentiment. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of the fact that the hexagons actually didn't fit over top once I had lined them all up. So I decided to cut my panel down using a scallop rectangle die from Pretty Pink Posh. So I am adhering that with some purple tape so it stays in place while it goes through my die cutting machine. And now I have a beautiful area here that is perfectly capable of fitting onto my card as well as not hanging off any edges, and I think it's going to look beautiful. So even though it cut out the inside of the rectangle and the outside of the rectangle with the scallops, I am going to keep them as one piece. So the scallop is just going to be an imprint onto the cardstock, or it's going to look more like an imprint. So it gives it a little bit of detail, and I think it looks really, really great with those hexagons, just adding all of those different shapes and textures. So now I'm going to go ahead and die cut my sentiment here. I am going to die cut the Hello Friend sentiment in some black cardstock, and I'm going to lay those down here for my Gemini Junior die cutting machine. It's a little bit different than using a Big Shot or a Cuttlebug in that the dies face up instead of down. So I am going to adhere these now to my card. I use always the same adhesive in 99% of my cards, and that's this Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. In order to do thin things like this, I keep the glue moving in a constant motion from left to right or up and down, and that way I don't get any big bulges of glue on there, and I just squeeze very, very lightly on the bottle. It also depends how full the bottle is as to how hard you have to squeeze the bottle to get the glue out. And I always just add a block on top to make sure that that is adhered down so I don't get any glue on my fingers. That block is so full of glue, it's not even funny. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and adhere my panel down to a card base. It's an A2 size card base. It measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it's all folded, and it's 110 pound cardstock, so a little bit of a thicker weight in comparison to the front panel. That keeps the weight down for shipping, as well as I don't really need to use a super expensive cardstock on the panel if it's going to be adhered to a thicker piece anyway. Now time to add a few embellishments here. So I added 3 little dots of Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. And I'm using these fun little sequins from Pretty Pink Posh that are super flat, and they are metallic silver, so they are absolutely gorgeous. And they're really quite easy to adhere. I'm using a pick-me-up tool, but because they're completely flat, they are easier to adhere than a sequin itself, I find, because there's just more surface area for the glue to stick to. So that's the end of today's card tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this collaboration with Wow and Pretty Pink Posh. Don't forget to check out the blog hop going on my blog for lots more inspiration on ways to use embossing powder as well as supplies from Pretty Pink Posh. If you're interested in any of the supplies used in this video, they are listed below in the video description. If you're interested in checking out another video by myself, then you can click on the suggested video above, or you can subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in a few days for another video.